All right, JoeyRitter.com, on Twitter at Joey Ritter. Fantastic guest today, a man who is the best at what he does, Tony Bruno of 97.5 The Fanatic. Great to have you. Thanks for doing this.
Thank you, Joe. I've never done one of these before. It's usually just me talking on the phone, but can you see me now?
Yeah, what you got a thing with your hand there. What happened?
I got tendonitis. I wear a brace. I've been wearing it for months. I work out, so I thought, maybe I had carpal but it's tendonitis, so I just got a shot last week, so I hope you don't mind the brace. I'll try to keep my hands down, but I'm Italian, so
that's
it's hard
fine.
to talk without my hands.
I'm the same way. People complain that I rock back and forth all the time, so it's going to be all over the place. Now, Tony, you and I have been trading emails the past couple weeks, and in that past couple weeks, I checked out some of your other videos you have on YouTube, and there's plenty of videos. People can go on YouTube and search Tony Bruno, and there's, how did you get into radio, all the standard questions, which I probably would have asked, but they already exist up there, so I got to go a different way with this.
Did you see my singing karaoke videos? Oh, they're probably my best work.
I saw the bio on the Fanatic page, and you referenced that, and they play the audio of it in the background.
No, I had nothing to do with it. Wherever I go, there seem to be cameras, and the karaoke thing was when I was in L.A. and there's a bar called Dimples, and so I went in there a couple nights and I got to know the owner, and then I finally had a couple of cocktails, and then at the end of the night you get up and you sing. That's the best part about karaoke. You don't have to sing. You just get up there and have the guts to make a fool of yourself.
And you didn't choose that song, right? Somebody chose that for you?
No, I chose Man, I Feel Like a Woman. I did Barry White, which is in my wheelhouse, but then when I did Shania Twain, Man, I Feel Like a Woman, I thought that was really what men should do. I mean, men should sing girl songs, not men's songs.
Yeah.
If you're going to make a fool of yourself, sing a girl song.
Yeah, I agree with that. Now, in that same interview that I saw, you referenced kind of nonchalantly that you interviewed 4 presidents.
Yes.
I mean, does it get any bigger than that?
Well, maybe 5 or 6 presidents, but they weren't alive. So, I've been fortunate, Joe. I've done a lot of stuff, and, being on the air on 9/11, of all the things that I've done in my sports career and news career, I was on the air that morning that the plane started hitting the towers. And so I went into newsman mode because my background was in news first, and I've always been a sports fan. So when the sports thing came, the transition was easy for me to go and give up news and just go to straight sports as sports talk radio started blowing up. Back in the 80s, really when it started to become a format that you saw some stations, The Fan in New York and a couple of other stations, and ESPN came on the air in the 90s and network radio. And so 9/11, to get back to the beginning of this, was my proudest moment because I was on the air talking sports, and then I had to do what my job eventually is and subsequently is, which is to inform, try to entertain, but in that case, it was about informing the public because a lot of people probably went elsewhere finding news stations, but I thought it was my obligation to cover the story as best I could.
Right. Now, what city were you in at that time?
I was living in Los Angeles. I moved to Los Angeles in August of 2000. So in September of 2001, I was doing a morning show with Andrew Siciliano, who's now at the NFL Network, and we were a morning show. We were on the air from 5 a.m. to 9 a.m. Pacific time, and so that was a morning drive show on the West Coast, but here on the East Coast, it was 9 a.m. to 1. So when the first plane hit the tower, it was already after 9 a.m., but early in the morning in Los Angeles. So we stayed on the air for 12 hours because it was one of those stories that you didn't want to walk away from. You just wanted to be there. Mm-hmm. And do what you do best, which is try to inform the public and try to live along, because I'm living through the same unbelievable feelings that everybody else is. So I felt the best place to do it was on the air with my listeners, who we had a chance to talk to. We were taking calls from all over the country and doing a national show, to get the national perspective from people's reactions, not just on the East Coast, but there was one of the planes was supposedly heading to Los Angeles, and that was the fear for the people listening on the West Coast. Wow, is that other plane, on its way here, and where is it going to crash when they get to Los Angeles? But unfortunately, that was the plane that I believe went into either the Pentagon or into the field in Pennsylvania.
Pittsburgh, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So, all right, well, going back to the presidents, who were the 4 presidents that you did interview?
The first one was Ronald Reagan, then Jimmy Carter, then Bill Clinton was the third one, and then who was the 4th one? I don't even remember now. I have them on tape somewhere, but it was Ronald Reagan at ESPN, Jimmy Carter, Bill Clinton, and George Bush. George Bush Sr., not the Junior.
Now, what kind of stuff was it? All about sports, or was it just general chit chat?
No, most of it was sports because remember when President Clinton was the president, Arkansas was in the NCAA tournament and he was an Arkansas guy. So we requested to have him on. This was when I was at ESPN back in the mid '90s, early '90s, and so I said, hey, let's get the president on to talk about Arkansas basketball. And so he agreed to come on. But the thing about interviewing the president is you have to submit a list of questions to the White House first. And so obviously the president knows what you're going to ask him. But, we went off script a little bit. Clinton was very good, and I introduced him by telling my audience that I thought, people are going to think that I'm pulling a fast one. I have some impersonator on the phone.
Yeah.
And I played Hail to the Chief, and Bill Clinton was on the line, and I said, I want people to know that I'm not pulling a fast one on the American public. This is the President of the United States. And Clinton responded brilliantly by saying, well, people think I've been pulling a fast one over on the country anyway. So it was a lot of fun, and he was great. And obviously Ronald Reagan, was a baseball broadcaster back in the day. And so it was fun. And anytime you interview with the President of the United States, it's always a thrill, because you're talking to athletes, and I've talked to pretty much every athlete you could think of. So that's always special because, you're talking to the most powerful man in the world.
Sure.
And you make sure you don't screw it up.
Yeah. Now, you just went to a wedding recently. Am I correct? Are you generally a wedding guy? I mean, do you do the fast dance?
Crasher. I'm not a wedding singer. No, I got it's an ongoing joke with my family and friends. I was married for a long time, 30 years. Had a great relationship, great marriage, 3 kids, all grown, all adults, all self-sustaining human beings in their 30s now. And so I joke around after going through a divorce. Some people like to get married again and try it. Some people get married 2, 3, 4, 5 times. And hey, I don't tell people what to do. I don't tell people how to find happiness. I just don't believe that, that getting married multiple times benefits anyone in any way, shape, or form. So I don't think you have to be married anymore to be happy. And I think there are a lot of women who feel the same way. And I know my girlfriend feels the same way. It's, as long as you're happy together, marriage is just a piece of paper.
Mm-hmm. Well, no, I was more asking, do you enjoy going to weddings? Not so much your views on marriage as a whole.
Not really, I mean, again, when I go, I say I don't want to go, and I've only been to a couple of weddings. My son's wedding a couple of years ago when he got married, and then my nephew who got married in November. And so I went to those. Those are the last two weddings I've been to in 10 years. So when I get invited, I get invited to a lot of weddings. But if it's a friend of a friend of a friend, and my girlfriend's friend of a friend of a friend, who I only met once, and I had to drive all the way to Connecticut, I complain a lot because I don't want to take an entire weekend to go to a wedding because that was a long drive up. And I don't want to sound like a whiner, but it was a nice ceremony. And the best part about this wedding, Joey, was it was the fastest wedding ceremony ever. Bride and groom come in, boom, boom, boom. Yes, I'll take you. Yes, I'll take you. Let's get out. Let's go to the reception. And the reception was in the basement of the church up in New Haven, Connecticut. So it was maybe the quickest wedding I've ever seen. If only divorce could be that quick. And I think they should do it the same way. 5-minute divorces, 5-minute wedding, in and out. This is, people they have short attention spans these days. And I think people want to get things done quickly.
Yeah, it's amazing. Like, I'm at the age where I'm a couple of years past where, my friends were getting married. And now, as I'm in my 30s, I'm really seeing the divorce rate hit. Like all my friends that were getting married when I was in my mid-20s, half of them aren't making it. It's unbelievable. Now, what kind of a guy were you in high school?
I like to use the word stunadus growing up. I had no reason. I wasn't smart. I didn't have parents who went to Ivy League schools. My mom had like a 3rd grade education. My dad, I think, graduated high school. He died when I was 10. So I really didn't come up in a neighborhood where my family was, you got to go to college and you've got to get, you've got to be a doctor or a lawyer. I was a middle-class kid growing up in a poor neighborhood in South Philly with immigrant parents, like a lot of people who grew up in the city. And, they wanted me to go to school, but I wasn't a good student at all because at the early age of 13, a couple of years after my dad died, I was a lost soul. I mean, I wasn't out doing drugs and, I smoked cigarettes when I was a young kid like every other punk kid did because that's what you did when you hung out at night and you didn't really have a father figure.
Yeah.
But I never really got into the trouble. I mean, I did some stupid things with my friends like go on the subway and ride up and down to, skip school and get on the L and go all the way to 69th Street and go all the way to Frankfurt in the front car. That was the cool, dangerous stuff we did back in those days. Now kids are a little more daring. They're fighting in schoolyards, they're videotaping everything, that kind of craziness. But, it's a different generation. So I wasn't a good student. I was terrible. I didn't even like going to school, but I had to go to school because I knew that if I wanted to be a broadcaster, that I had to go to school to study. So I reluctantly did it. I had help. I would listen to radio at night, and that's how I got hooked on radio without any kind of guidance. Nobody said, hey, how about that radio thing? There was no reason for me to be in this field. I just listened to the radio growing up as a kid. It was 1964. I was 12. My dad died in 62. And I started listening to Phillies games at night on the radio. And I fell in love with the power of hearing radio at night. And I would listen to stations all over the country and say, wow, this is really fascinating. And so something hit me as a young kid, and that's what I said, that's what I want to do. And, a lot of kids think they want to do stuff when they're young, and then they grow up and they realize that's not really my love. But I stuck to it. I went to school, and I became I never became a good student, but I became a good learner once I got into the business and realized that the only way to get better is to be on the air and absorb from people who are better than you. And that's what I always tried to do.
Right. Now, you alluded to when you were 12 years old. And, were you just a 12-year-old kid, before you went through puberty and you had a high voice and then you just woke up one day with the Tony Bruno voice?
Yeah, it's training. I never had a great voice. My voice, luckily, was a nice speaking voice. As they say in the old broadcasting school commercials, if you have if you have a nice speaking voice and average intelligence, you too can do what I do. So I had a nice voice, but I had a South Philly accent. One of the things that I did, I always listened to classic broadcasters, because you listen to people on radio and you hear guys, Howard Cosell had the big accent, he was a New York guy. And so I loved Howard Cosell, but he was a unique act. But the broadcasters I listened to were the guys with the big voices and the great enunciation. And I'm like, wow, man, if I could ever sound half that good, I could be good at this. So I learned diction, and instead of learning, I was a political science major actually at college when I went to Temple. But I wanted to be good. I wanted to sound good. So I worked on enunciation and diction and just the basics of sounding like a good broadcaster. All the other stuff, the knowledge and how to write news and how to cover sports, that all came on the job training. I learned pretty much because I was in radio at 18. So I got to learn on the job, and I was fortunate to get a good job. And well, it wasn't a good job. I was making $75 a week. But I got my foot in the door. Yeah. Many kids in college were just hoping, to get a job at the local college radio station and pretend they were on radio. I was on radio at age 18, so I was thrown into the fire and had to really become good in a long time, except it took me like 7 years before they took me off the night shift and put me on the daytime.
Yeah. Now, speaking of being a kid and listening to radio, I remember when you were on WIP Morning Show, so I'm talking 20 years ago. I think I was in 5th grade, 6th grade, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm almost 99% positive you said this. You were talking about how you wanted shootouts to exist in the NHL, and you were talking about playing the original Nintendo system and playing the ice hockey game, and when the score was tied when you were playing the game, you didn't want to score, you wanted it to go in the shootout because you had so much fun doing the shootout. Do you still feel that way? Do you like the shootout in today's game?
Well, to settle a tie in regular season play, absolutely, because the 5-minute overtime period's a joke. You rarely see. Although you'll see more teams scoring now because they don't want to go to the shootout. They try to end the game, but before they went to the shootout, it was you play regulation, 1-1 5-minute overtime, and many times the game would end in a tie. And so I always liked the shootout because there was finality to it. Now, luckily, they don't do it in the Stanley Cup playoffs. They actually play extra period. They play as long as necessary for a team to score the winning goal. But I guess you can call me like the Chip Kelly of the '90s. I was a visionary when it came to the NHL. The NHL, unfortunately, still nationally is not a big sport. But here in Philly, the Flyers, here they are, one of the a really disappointing season, and they finished 4 attendance, which is remarkable. I think the Flyer fan base may be the most diehard, dedicated fan base, even when a team has a tough season. That's why I love hockey. I think hockey fans are the most dedicated to their particular team than any other sport. I know the Eagle fans are great here, and the Phillies fans show up, but if the Phillies continue to struggle this year, and you already see it, there's going to be a lot of empty seats at Citizens Bank Park this summer.
Yeah, it's weird to see empty seats there, but hopefully that doesn't keep up. Now, I love following you on Twitter, which is Tony Bruno Show on Twitter. Because I read your tweets in your voice, and it just makes it that much better. Now there's all these other parody accounts, Tony Bruno's scooter, Tony Bruno's condom. What is up with all that?
I have no idea. It's a funny. There's a lot of parody accounts of like real people. Like I'm not a real person, but Bill Walton, not Bill Walton, not Charles Barkley. So all of those, the people who do this stuff are really, really funny. And Twitter's great, and you can get some information on there. I don't go on there when there's a news story breaking because everybody thinks they're a journalist now because they can get something from a police scanner or a friend of a friend of a friend tells them that they heard this. So I follow legitimate reporters, especially with stories that are going on. But I don't use Twitter as a news source. Now, if somebody, when I'm on the air, says something on Twitter that's a respected journalist or a Jay Glazer or somebody's following the NFL and they give a little nugget there, then I'll say, hey, Jay Glazer's reporting because he's a legitimate guy. And I don't have a problem with people having fun. So when I go on Twitter, for the most part, it's all about having fun. And I think a lot of my listeners then say, hey, I'll get followers if I create a fake Tony Bruno's condom, Bruno's mama. There's now a new one, is Tony's kitty. So my cat, the beautiful Missy, in fact, I have her right here. Let me pick her up for you. Sorry. This is the beautiful little Missy, my ragdoll kitten. She's actually pretty good normally, but now she's actually
a beautiful cat.
Yeah, she's beautiful, and now she has her own Twitter file. So follow her at Tony's Kitty, and she'll have a lot of wonderful things to say, fresh pictures. Oh, Bruno's Kitty. I'm sorry, Bruno's Kitty. The latest, and Lily here will actually have some good tweets for you.
So you're not behind that?
Somebody that I know decided that would be a good Twitter account, but that one is more close to home. Actually, it's my girlfriend who came up with it. So she's going to tweet as Lily, my kitty. But the other ones, I don't even know a lot of these people. There's, as you pointed out, there's Bruno's bald head. There's Bruno's condom is one of the newer ones. Very, very active, but at least he's safe. That's the good thing
about it. Now, when I watched the other interviews that you have on YouTube, you talked about how you never suffered from bad ratings. You always did well, but stations out in California replaced you because it was cheaper to bring in somebody young and somebody new. So my question to you is, have you listened to these younger guys over the years, and can you tell when someone's gonna be good or not be good?
Yeah, there's a lot of great young talent. I'm not one of these old crotchety old guys who says, these young whippersnappers, they'll never be able to do it. I was one of those young punks at one time also. I think the difference now is, I think younger guys have more opportunity because there's so many more sports radio stations. When I started, there were very few sports stations. So now the field's blown up. Women are getting into it a lot easier than they would have. A lot of women are being accepted now in sports, especially television, but you're hearing more on radio. And young guys, like the guys who work with me, I love seeing young guys who are go-getters, and this is what they want to do. A lot of people who get into radio, though, a lot of younger people, they think, hey, that's a cool career. My friends will know me. I think that happens a lot at ESPN, where I worked for 8 years. When you're ESPN and you're that powerful, you'll get a young guy who works, in a small TV station somewhere and say, hey, I can get on SportsCenter. So the advantage goes to ESPN because they have hundreds and hundreds of young guys and young women who say, hey, if I could be a SportsCenter actor or work at ESPN News, I get my foot in the door and people will see me all over the country. But the bottom line is you're not going to make a lot of money unless you're really a standout performer and can break away from the pack. And ESPN has so many people working there that they're not in the business of creating stars anymore because they know that they have the upper hand, and there's so many people who are willing to work there for whatever it takes to get their foot in the door. And so the advantage goes to the corporations hiring young people. So to make the long story short, the young guys today, and even the good ones, even the ones who aren't good, who try it, and the companies try them and see if they can get a niche and get some following and some ratings, and then obviously have leverage to get money when the contract situation presents itself. They're the ones that are having the tough times now because stations aren't paying a lot of money. So you've got to be willing, in many cases, to work for virtually nothing and then try to build yourself up to get into a position where you have some leverage. And if you don't have leverage in this business, you're really not going to make a lot of money. I'm not suggesting that you can't make money, but the days of the $1 million a year, Angelo Catali is one of those very special talents, one of the rare guys who can make 7 figures. But the days of the 7-figure sports talk radio hosts, and even on TV, you're seeing it in sports departments on local TV sportscasts, those days are over.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if I'm in the minority, but, when I hear a new guy that I'm not familiar with, I don't want to pick on anybody on The Fanatic, but I have to use that as an example. I just think everybody's trying to sound like you or trying to sound like Mike Missinelli, and they have to put on that front and that voice, and it just doesn't seem natural to me.
Well, you know what it is? It's these are the people that go. I listen to a lot of people. I didn't take their act, so to speak, but I would pick and choose and pick parts of the people that I admired and say, hey, I like when that guy does that. But to me, I always tell young guys when they ask me about getting in the business, just be yourself. Don't try to be somebody else. I try to be myself. I think I'm the same person I am off the air as I am on the air. I don't have an act. I do what I do. I have fun. I laugh a lot. Some people don't like that. They think I'm forcing humor. I mean, that's the way I conduct my life every day, and that's why I think what I've done in sports radio has been pretty unique. Now you're seeing more and more of it, and if they're imitating me or taking that as part of what they want to do to become successful, I don't have a problem with it. It's actually an honor and flattering to me that someone says, hey, I like the way you do what you do, and I'm going to try to incorporate it into how I do my job. But all I tell these guys is just be yourself. Don't try to be somebody else.
Yeah, I mean, the reason I listen to you is not so much really to listen about sports talk. I just want to hear like your one-liners, and I'm all in for the humor. I'm one of those guys that listens to you for that. Like, hockey's my biggest thing, but you're tweeting about the NFL draft last night. I have no idea. I don't know anything about football. I just listen to you for the personality. Now we have a fan question here.
Oh, we have a fan poll question?
Yeah, do you want to take a fan question?
Or is this how are you getting these questions?
From Twitter.
Okay.
Sometimes I tweet that I'm going to interview. Sometimes I say the name of the person I'm interviewing, but in this case I didn't. So this comes from Aaron M918 on Twitter, and I'm assuming you've seen the movie Groundhog Day with Bill Murray?
Multiple times. I see it every day, actually, when I wake up.
Okay. Well, if you could live a day over and over again in Tony Bruno's life, which day would you pick?
Wow, that's a good one. I haven't thought of that. I'd have to think. I could say it'd be, because my girlfriend's sitting next to me, and say the day that I met her, but that would be partially true, but I don't want to lie. I mean, I don't know if that's the day I want to relive over and over again. Without, at the risk of
I mean, you might have had a stomach ache or something that day,
Yeah, I mean, again, it could have been the greatest day, and it was one of the great days. But for me to be fair and honest with you, Joey, I don't know. I'd have to sit back, and you'd have to give me a night to think about it, and I'd have to write all the things that I could remember down, and then try to pinpoint one as the day that I would like to relive over and over and over again.
All right, maybe tweet it to me in like a week after you thought about it. Tony, I really appreciate you doing the show. People have to follow you at Tony Bruno Show on Twitter, and continue success. Keep killing it, all right?
All right, thanks a lot. Appreciate it, Joe. Thanks for having me on.
You got it.